Today I'm going to show you how I recreated this Brock collection dress. I really liked the bodice, the ties, and the sleeves really are what drew me to try and recreate this. So I'm going to just start with kind of a simple bodice sloper. I just draw the shape that I want out on the pattern, and after I finished drawing it, I just cut it out and used that. The only issue I had with this were my darts. They weren't really in the right place, but fine enough. And before I used my actual fabric, I went ahead and made a mock-up out of some leftover scraps. And now that I have my top pattern how I want, I'm just cutting out the front and the back, 2 of each for a front and a lining. Lining up the shoulder seams, and I sew them down, and after I fit it on my dress form to see if I need to make any adjustments. I'm marking where I should sew, seam allowances, just trying to get this top to fit as well as I can. Here I'm pinning the right side and lining together, and then I sew from the inside and iron outside, so then I could sew the lining down. But after making this dress, I realized maybe I should have done the lining afterwards, as they weren't exactly the same size, or it's a very silky fabric, so I think something might have slipped somewhere, and it has a little bit of a, I guess, some like slack or sag in certain parts. Just clipping my seam allowance to make the edges cleaner when I turn this right side out. And after I do that, I'll press and sew the lining to the seam allowance to keep it from kind of rolling to the outside. I've sewn most of the top lining is sewn down and pressed, and I have a sleeve, which we're going to look at the construction now. I sewed 3 sections with elastic thread, and here I'll show you how I wind my bobbin. So I have this spool of elastic thread, and I just lightly, loosely wind it on my bobbin. It's kind of hard to describe how loose, but you don't want it as tight as your regular bobbin, and you don't want it loose so that it's kind of wiggling on there, and you just stick it into the bobbin part of your machine as normal. So if I remember, I did not use my longest stitch. I used somewhere in the middle, but you run it through as normal and kind of pull in the back to give it that cinching or the kind of elastic effect you want. Also, steaming with the iron makes the elastic shrink up, which you can kind of see here. I made the mistake of kind of melting my fabric. It's synthetic, so just holding it above is good enough. And here on the sleeve you can see the 2 rows of elastic that I sewed for each section on the sleeve. And now I'll hem the sleeve and the rest of the dress the same way with a rolled hem minus the annoying rolled hem. Presser foot, I used instead my invisible zipper foot to cut and get as close as I can to the first fold, and after that you'll cut as close as you can to that stitching, fold over again, and you should have 1 line of stitching on both sides. I need more practice. I still get 2 rows of stitching on the back, but at least on the right side of the fabric, 1 row, small enough, good enough for me. So the sleeve is finished. It has a gathered cap and our elastic kind of poof sections, which look better when there's an actual arm. And you probably don't have to use elastic thread, but I figured it would be more comfortable. Now that the main part of the dress is done, I'm pinning the skirt to the mannequin just to get an idea of how it'll look, and I didn't really like just this big rectangle of fabric, so I decided I wanted to do pretty much like a tiered skirt. So I cut this giant rectangle into 3 sections, gathered and sewed them together, and then attached it back to the dress. one section of this skirt is gathered and sewn. I made the mistake of not doing French seams on the skirt part, so overlocking that was not very pretty. Here, the bodice and the skirt connection, you can see I'm going to do a French seam, but that kind of ruffle looks a little cute, so maybe next time I'll try to leave something like that. Now I'm prepping the top of the bodice to complete the French seam, just checking that all my fabric is out of the way. I would hate to cut a big hole into it, so trimming and then folding it back over and sewing it down. Here we have a very satisfying French seam, which looks very nice and clean on the inside and the same on the outside. I just wish I hadn't forgot to do all of my seams like that. And now the dress reveal at around 6 a.m. in the morning while camping in Astrakhan. Super hot in August. Enjoy.